Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
So, I don't put metal, all this are in the ionic form. Okay. If you take steel, aluminum, they are all in the metallic state, they are not in the ionic state. So, that you cannot digest, they have to be in the ionic form, something that is soluble in water, right. So, solvent in our system is water. In the laboratory you have different solvents, but there is only one solvent, which is water, right. So, something that is soluble in water only can be present in biology. Okay. So, the evolution of the universe and the evolution of all the creatures, you would have probably read billions of years. So, over these years all this has happened, still we do not know many things. So, initially everybody felt that the life is made of only carbon mostly. If you look at this, the weight of the people, that is probably true in terms of the way that things are happening. Maybe people thought it is organic. I am not saying carbon, organic. That means carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, all that is present, right. But it is later slowly people realized, but also there are inorganic metals are also important. Okay. So, among them, if you take iron 2 plus and 3 plus, or copper 2 plus or 1 plus, cobalt 2 plus or 3 plus. These are the the most common oxidation states in classical coordination chemistry, and only this classical coordination chemistry is only happening in the living organisms. But there are other higher oxidation states also people talk about, but we still do not have any proof for those higher oxidation state. But without invoking the higher oxidation state, it is difficult to imagine such kind of reactions are happening, and hence people invoke higher oxidation states of the metal, right. So, magnesium, sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, many other, and on the right hand side you have halides, chloride, bromide, fluoride, chloride, bromide, iodide, but fluorine is not very common, because it is something unique in terms of its electronegativity, size, and many things. And then you have p block elements. So, this is where you have transition elements, here alkali and alkaline earth metals, alkali and then alkaline earth metals. So, in terms of the if you take the weight of a human body of, let us say, 60 or 70 kilo, that how much of these different elements are present in the human body is what you need to worry about. So, if you look at that, you have hydrogen and then helium, then you have all these p block elements, right. Most of them carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and then you have phosphorus, sulfur, right. And then among the halides, chloride, iodide, very small amount present, but chloride is very common. So, chloride is present as Cl minus, or the cations, sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, these are all very essential. Without the presence of these ions, life does not exist. So, if you are anemic or if you have dysentery, you lose all these ions, that is why you are given mineral water. So, mineral water means all these ions are present, So that means you need all those ions, right? So these are ions that are present in bulk. This in terms of the amounts, if you look at it, they are grams. So these ions also determine charge balance the protein. See, proteins are all negatively charged. Look at an amino acid which is zwitterionic in character, plus and minus. Or if you look at DNA, it's negatively charged. So that negative charge is balanced by the positive charge, which is potassium, sodium. So sodium is required, but if you have too much sodium also you have BP, right? So less sodium is also problem, higher sodium is also problem. So the importance of sodium is indicated by the low sodium, low BP, or high sodium, high BP. Potassium also plays an important role. So these not only play an important role in serving as neutralizing the charge on the amino acids or on a DNA, but also the amount of the charge, the ions that are present, leads to generation of the potential. So redox potential, any concentration difference will give you redox potential. So this concentration potential gives rise to signaling. So anything that if you touch a hot surface, immediately you will feel that you have touched something. Immediately you will feel. So that is generated by the field. So the change in the ions will lead to the potential, and that potential change in the potential gives signaling. So it signals you that something is wrong here. So that's how it is all done. Nerve signaling, many other different kinds of things happen. So all these ions. So this is important for the backbone of the body, bone, isn't it? So otherwise these are all important for charge neutralization, also signaling of the messages. And here comes the majority of the weight by the hydrogen, and then you have carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, all that, amino acids, proteins, and then DNA, RNA, all of this will contain mostly composed of the elements coming from the P block elements. So oxygen, particularly water, your body probably has several liters of water. So if you calculate the weight of that and the number of hydrogens that are present, so it becomes a majority. Oxygen and hydrogen becomes the majority in terms of the weight, right? So in addition you have phosphorus, nitrogen, oxygen, and then sulfur, amino acids. You have several amino acids containing sulfur, isn't it? So and then oxygen, carboxylic acids, which are all amino acids. You have 19 amino acids, and one of them is not chiral, the rest of them are all chiral. So all those amino acids are utilized by the living organisms, and these proteins are important to do lot of different kinds of functions. One of the proteins is that something that you are all familiar with is hemoglobin. Hemoglobin, what it does? It transports the oxygen from the lungs to the blood, and from the blood to different parts of the body. So ours is a multicellular organism. So each cells functions independently. Your skin, your hair, your eye, your teeth, all this are different cells. So each one of them, your nail, for example, it does its own function. So each one of them has to, for them to function, they need energy. That energy is taken from the body through the blood, and then oxygen is supplied to the place where these reactions are happening. Without the oxygen, the energy will not be produced. Metabolism, whatever is respiration, metabolism, oxygen is necessary. The way that motorcycle uses petrol and oxygen, but petrol is not soluble in water. So motorcycle uses oxygen and petrol, but the human body uses, or living organisms uses, the water containing doesn't use hydrocarbon, it uses carbohydrates. That means carbon after hydration is carbohydrate. Carbohydrate we consume. Of course, protein is there, all other things are there, it's all necessary for the function, and these molecules what gives rise to the energy. So metabolism, so that means combining the your carbohydrate with oxygen will give you carbon dioxide and water, right? And the reverse, what happens in combining of water and carbon dioxide? Huh? Huh? Carbon? You have to speak loudly, no? I am unable to understand, only half the letter is coming, I don't know. It means to me carbon. Metabolism, carbohydrate combines with oxygen, gives you carbon dioxide and energy. Water also there, right? And the reverse reaction also happens. What is the reverse reaction? Carbon dioxide and water combines to give you carbohydrate. Where it happens? Yeah, photosynthesis. So plants, synthesize carbohydrate by combining carbon dioxide and water. Photosynthesis gives you carbohydrate, which is the source of energy, and you consume that carbohydrate combined with oxygen, gives carbon dioxide energy plus water, right? So these are both the reactions are happening simultaneously in our body. Living organisms, every living organisms need energy. Bacteria, virus, they also need energy. So they also need all these metal ions. Without any of these metal ions, bacteria, virus will not function. That is one of the reason why you don't want to have a free metal ion in our body, because once a free metal ion is there, bacteria, virus also will be waiting for that. So even food is also something, if you leave outside, bacteria, virus will always be there. So free metal ion is toxic for your body. So hence these free metal ions are held together by ligands. So we talked about so far coordination chemistry, where the metals are held together by the ligands, and we call them coordination compounds. So in biology also you have ligands, and those are called bioligands, and the coordination chemistry in biology is called biocoordination chemistry, because it is something related to the biology, and there are more or less similar. There is not much difference between the coordination chemistry, that what I explained to you or what you have studied is not much different from the coordination chemistry in the biology, except that the ligands are different. So the ligands that are get synthesized in the body, hemoglobin gets synthesized in our body. Every 15 days once a few grams of hemoglobin is synthesized, which contains porphyrin. And if you want to synthesize the same hemoglobin or a porphyrin in the laboratory is so difficult, but readily it happens in our body. So still people are unable to understand how body is able to synthesize this hemoglobin, but not the same thing in the laboratory. So there are so many things mystery that we still don't know. Artificial blood people want to make, but it is not much successful, right? So that means we have not understood everything. So going back to different metal ions in biology, among the metals that are very common in living organisms, iron is the most common metal in all kinds of living organisms. All living organisms use metal iron. So one of the reasons why nature has used, nature means all of us, all animals, plants also, virus, bacteria, which we cannot even see, they also utilize all these metal ions. Among them, iron is the most abundant metal in the living organisms. Okay, and the reason is it is quite abundant. That means plenty is present in the earth crust, but also is present in another planet. Mars, right? So it's called red planet. The red is due to the presence of iron oxide. Iron oxide is red in color. Okay, so that is the reason the iron, of course, in the earth crust plenty of iron is present. So what is available only nature has utilized. So iron is utilized something, and also of course silicon is plenty available. SiO2, sand, plenty is available, but still nature did not use. That is because of the chemistry. So if you look at the chemistry, there is not much coordination chemistry for silicon. And if you want to make silicon from +4 to other valence state is very difficult to achieve. That means energy required to change the oxygen state is very high. So, in doing so, probably cells gets damaged. You imagine energy means we are talking about redox potential. So, if it is 2 redox, positive or negative, it will kill the cells and you will not survive. So, this is what is called biocompatible elements. So, that means for biological systems, they are very compatible, they are very friendly. Unlike, where, I just gave you an example of silica, which is silicon, sand is present everywhere in the world, anyway plenty, but nature did not use silicon as a metal, but instead use iron metal. So, it is because very easy to change the oxidation state of these metals, particularly iron 2 to iron 3 is very easy. It does not require much of the energy. So, when we talk about energy, that means it does not damage the cells also, because cells also have to survive. If it is achieving such a high potential for it to go from let us say +2 to +4, then it indirectly it has damaged the cells. To achieve silicon, for example, from +4 in SiO2, if you want to bring it to +2, it is not so easy. You have to use highly acidic hydrochloric acid. Then only you can make. Even then, it will form a silicic acid. SiOH4 what will form. If you add hydrochloric acid to SiO2, silicic acid it will form. So, that means that also is highly acidic, which is not bio-friendly, because acidic we cannot if you use a highly basic soap, you will have a lot of bubbles in your form. So, indicating that too much of basic or too much of acidic is also living organisms cannot take. So, it should be something neutral. So, that is why these neutral soaps are very expensive. Dove soap, which has a neutral pH, is very, very expensive. Very difficult to achieve neutral soaps. Whereas easy to make, put sodium hydroxide, take some, coconut oil, some other oil, which is, very easy to neutralize, and you get a soap. But, and very easy, which is what is called saponification. Take an oil and add sodium hydroxide, you will get a solid cake, which is what the soap. But if you want to achieve a soap which is neutral in nature, it is very difficult. Very controlled amounts you have to add, which takes time, energy and all that, and hence some of these soaps are very expensive. So, now we are talking about the metal ions. So, iron I told you is the most abundant in all kinds of living organisms because of the presence of the iron. Plenty is present, but also is friendly. So, I was giving an example of silica, plenty is present, but it is not friendly, it is not bio-friendly, and hence silicon is not present in any of the organisms. So, the next other metal that that is something very common in biology, iron is used for transporting oxygen. Hemoglobin is an example, or to store oxygen, myoglobin is an example. So, one stores the oxygen, other transports the oxygen. So, their ability to hold the oxygen tightly, in hemoglobin it loosely binds, whereas in myoglobin binds very strongly. And how this loosely binds and strongly binds is determined by the structure of the hemoglobin and myoglobin. So, many factors that if you know, very interesting, you will find it very interesting to read, and once you understand and you want to read more and more and you want to understand more and more, because these are all some of the curiosities how this happens, right. So, that is biocompatible, very easy to change the oxidation state of iron from +2 to +3. You keep iron 2 in the air, slowly gets oxidized to iron 3, and so that means easy to bring back from iron 3 to iron 2. So, this change in the oxidation state also easily achievable. By doing so, it has given electron. Now, by taking that electron, I can do reduction of the oxygen to O2 to O2 minus, which is a superoxide, and that is what normally happens in hemoglobin. So, when it binds to hemoglobin, iron binds oxygen to hemoglobin, O2, which is neutral in character, now becomes O2 minus, which is what is superoxide. So, that is easily achievable. So, the next closest one that can do a similar function of transporting oxygen is copper. Blue crabs, in some places blue crabs are available. So, in the case of blue crabs, they do not use hemoglobin, they use copper for transporting oxygen, because copper is copper 2+ is blue in color, that is why they look blue. but they are using copper for binding oxygen and transporting it. Why bind and transport? Because for metabolism you need. What is the respiration? Conversion of carbohydrate to energy, carbon dioxide plus water. You need that. Without that, it is not possible. The way that I told you, motorcycle without the petrol combining with oxygen, that same it will not give you energy, isn't it? So same thing. So next common element is copper. Again, it is also kind of friendlier compared to other metals. Whereas if you go to cobalt 2 and cobalt 3, once you oxidize cobalt 2 to cobalt 3, it is very difficult to bring it back to cobalt 2, because the reason is stabilization energy. Cobalt 3 has the highest possible stabilization energy of negative 2.4 delta O. So that means very difficult to bring it back. So only in certain cases nature has utilized, which is what is in cobalamin. Cobalamin is vitamin B12. So we have these vitamins which body is unable to synthesize those in the body. That's why you have to take it from outside. That's why these are called vitamins. They are vital. They are necessary for the body to function, but body is unable to produce them. That's why you have to take it from as a supplement. Vitamin B12, in some cases, those who eat meat, I understand it will have cobalt 2 plus. Whereas if you don't eat meat, then you need to supplement it with the cobalamin tablets are available, right? So that's where cobalt 2 and cobalt 3 is present. Magnesium is present in bones. Calcium is bone. Chlorophyll. So the difference between chlorophyll and the hemoglobin, there is not much. It's the same kind of framework, but there is small modification that has happened. So if you want to do anything, some new chemistry, that something is already known, some new ligand is there, I want to modify, right? I want to modify the electronics, I want to modify the steric factor. Many things are there. That's how you do it. So same way nature also has utilized this heme. Heme is a ligand actually. Like we talked about water or ammonia or chloride, EDTA, we all talked about. Those are all ligands. So heme is a bioligand, which has a planar structure with 4 nitrogen and 4 pyrrole rings that joined together form an aromatic ring. So that is what is hemoglobin. We don't have time to show you all that picture, but then so that hemoglobin with this aromatic structure, planar, highly conjugated. That is the reason why red in color. Blood is red in color because it is highly conjugated, not because the presence of iron. Iron doesn't give you red color. The color is given by the heme group, which is highly conjugated. It has 11 double bonds. So when you have more number of double bonds, particularly when they are cyclic and aromatic, it will be even more colored. So if you take carrot, it has so many. It's a long chain hydrocarbon with alternative double bond and single bond. So it is a conjugated double bonds. That's why carrot is orange in color, right? If you take petrol, there is no double bonds, there is no color. If you take ethylene, there is only one double bond, it's colorless. So if you keep adding the double bonds, conjugated double bonds, then the molecule becomes colored. So you will be able to see the color in the visible region. So same reason why the hemoglobin is having conjugated double bond, 11 of them which are conjugated and cyclic, gives you highly red color. The red color of the blood is due to the heme conjugation. Conjugation means in aromaticity. What is aromatic, right? Benzene ring has 3 single bond, double bond. There is very difficult to differentiate double bond and triple bond, double bond and single bond. They keep moving. Huh? Yeah, correct. Alternative double bond and single bond. So that is what called conjugation. So, more the double bonds and single bonds, conjugated bond, they it will become colored. That is one of the reason why your carrot is colored. So, same way your hemoglobin is colored, it is not because of the presence of the iron, because iron will not give you color. Although you probably, I just now told you the red planet, which is Fe2O3 is red in color, but that epsilon is very important. When I say color, the strength of the color is what determines the the density, right? So, that you have to keep in mind. I have given you example of a permanganate and copper sulfate pentahydrate, and very cleanly I have told you that if you take 1 molar of each one of these and dilute and to 1 liter, in one case you will see the color, in another case you do not see the color, because epsilon of permanganate is very, very high. So, same way in the solid state your ferric oxide is observes red, but if you make a solution it is almost colorless, very pale color. So, the different kinds of metal ions are present, and hemoglobin and chlorophyll is an example where chlorophyll magnesium is present, but there is a small modification of this ligand is what gives rise to what nature has utilized, and that is what researcher also do. Slight modification, steric and electronics factors they will add and try to find out whether it will, obviously it will get changed, and you can tune into whatever you require by changing the steric and electronic factors. And it is not so easy, some of these big molecules is to change the steric and electronic factor, that is where the problem comes, and these molecules are very big in nature. The molecular weights of these proteins are not like sodium chloride, which is sodium 23, 55 point something, but the proteins are kilodaltons, 10,000, 20,000, 40,000, 80,000. When you have such a huge molecule, it is very difficult to study, very difficult to look at the structure. Sodium chloride crystals, you go put it in within few minutes, you will get the sodium chloride structure, but not the case with the protein. So, proteins are very difficult to study. So, one of the proteins is the hemoglobin. So, there are enzymes and there are proteins. So, the difference between enzymes and proteins, enzymes catalyze the reaction, proteins they do not catalyze the reaction, but they are stoichiometric. So, one molecule of hemoglobin will transport one molecule of oxygen, whereas enzyme it needs only 1/10 of that or even less than that. So, 5% is what is called a catalyst, whereas in a stoichiometric reaction for one molecule you need one molecule of a catalyst, that is one molecule of a metal. You do not call it catalyst, means only small amount is necessary. Okay. So, among the the modifications hemoglobin, vitamin B12 also is only small modification what happens to the core hemoglobin. So, the periphery of the hemoglobin, different groups are attached when it comes to vitamin B12 or when it comes to chlorophyll, many other modified ligands are there. These are called heme. Heme ligands, also called heme proteins. So, those are the and the name hemoglobin is coming from here. So, that molecule has a globular structure, that is why it is called globin. Globule means right. So, hemoglobin and then myoglobin you have. So, hemoglobin it transports oxygen, myoglobin stores oxygen. These are in mammals. In animals mostly you will find hemoglobin, myoglobin. So, myoglobin binds oxygen very strongly and hence it stores it, and whenever hemoglobin requires it, it provides. That is why it is called a storage. whereas hemoglobin, it does not bind very strongly, and hence it is very useful to transport. If it binds it very strongly, then it is not able to transport it. It will not be able to release it. So this all depends on the structures of the molecules. So hemoglobin is these are all proteins. So protein means you have 19 amino acids. So these one of among the 19 amino acids, maybe 5-6 amino acids are present in a protein, for example, let us say. So it will be a long chain amino acids put together. It can be 70, 80, 100 amino acids are put together. So how a protein forms. Peptide bond has to form, right? So long chain peptide bond is what is a protein. And this is the long chain peptide bond is not present in a linear form, so it gets folded. So when it gets folded, function happens. So that's why the protein folding is one of the famous field in protein biology. Protein folding. Why they fold? Because without folding they will not have the function. So similarly hemoglobin, they were all folded into a globular form and gives that ability to transport oxygen for a hemoglobin. So without folding they will not do the function. So protein gets folded, they will not be present in the form of a linear form. So different kinds of folding happens, and that folding happens because of the hydrogen bonding, many other reason. So you have NH and CO that is present. So in the long chain, these NH and they come together because it's a very long chain. So they come closer, and now hydrogen bonding happens. So alpha, alpha helix, beta helix, and all that people talk about. So if it is in the hydrogen bonding, the molecular folding is in the form of an alpha, goes like that. That is called alpha helix. But if it is in the beta form, then it is So this is all due to the new forces, the hydrogen bonding, van der Waals interaction, all that gives rise to this new folding, and that new folding gives new function. So for the hemoglobin. So hemoglobin has 4 such proteins. It's a long chain. So you would have seen different way they are folded. So this is a one long chain, but it is folded. So 4 such proteins are present, and in the center where iron is present, and there are 4 nitrogens which are holding the metal, and that is what is heme, we call it. So that 4 nitrogens are coming from 4 pyrrole rings. Pyrrole ring, what is this organic molecule, which are in a cyclid form, which are conjugated. So now iron is in the +2 form, and now oxygen gets bonded to, only O2 can bind oxygen. Sorry, only iron 2 can bind oxygen, not iron 3. Okay. So because iron 2, it has to, there should be some interaction between the 2 molecules. Take and give is what gives rise to interaction, right? So here, give an electron from iron 2 to oxygen. That is what is the interaction. So here iron, once it gives electron, this goes to, actually iron in terms of the size is much bigger than the size of the ring. That heme ring that I talked about, the size of that heme ring is of iron is bigger than the size what is present in the cavity. So that means it will not sit exactly inside the center of the cavity. So instead it sits above. So once it bonds to the oxygen, it goes to iron 3, then it sits inside. So you can imagine the size of the ion also matters here. So iron 2 size is much bigger than iron 3. So now that iron 3 fits into the cavity. So now the ion 2 has become ion 3, so 1 electron is given, so O2 becomes, so this is superoxide. Hemoglobin, oxygen, which is what is called oxyhemoglobin. So there are 4 such units that are present. One unit only I am showing you. So 4 units are present to next to one another. They all interact. So one binding of oxygen by the one is affected by the other. So this is what is called cooperativity effect. So that means one cooperates to bind another, because 4 of them are there. When more than 2 people are there, more than one is there, then you need a cooperation from the other person, right? And same thing happens here. There are 4 units, so each unit affects the binding of an oxygen. So once one unit binds an oxygen, the ability to bind oxygen for the second becomes easier. And similarly, as 3 bonded to the oxygen, 4th becomes easier. So there is a what is called cooperativity effect. There are so many physical chemistry, kinetics, and all people have studied and found out that how these affect binding oxygen. So these binding oxygen, the efficiency to transport oxygen is very good for hemoglobin. And now we have to talk about the oxygen pressure. What is the oxygen pressure in the atmosphere? What is the oxygen pressure in the atmosphere? What is the pressure in the atmosphere? We have gases, 80% nitrogen, 20% oxygen, 19% oxygen, 1% other gases. So when you have so many of gases, obviously pressure will be there, right? So we don't experience, but there is a pressure. So what is the pressure of the atmosphere? 1 atmosphere. Pressure of the atmosphere is 1 atmosphere, right? Now what is the pressure of oxygen? 1 atmosphere is what? One atmosphere is 763 millimeters of mercury, right? 1 atmosphere. Now when you have more than 1 gases, you call it partial pressure. It's all physical chemistry. So now what is the partial pressure of nitrogen and what is the partial pressure of oxygen? Yeah, now how much? ppm. No, this is millimeters of mercury, it's pressure, right? We are talking about. ppm means we are talking about the concentration. We are talking about pressure. So 1 atmosphere for oxygen, 20% oxygen and 80% oxygen, nitrogen put together is 1 atmosphere. Now 80% oxygen in 1 atmosphere is how much? 0.8 atmosphere, correct? 0.8 atmosphere is nitrogen and 0.2 atmosphere is oxygen. So 760 into 0.2, how much? So that is about 152 millimeters of mercury. That is the pressure of the oxygen in the atmosphere. So now what is the pressure inside the lungs? How 40? How you came up with that number? Tell me, I want to know. You are asking your friend or no? You are asking his support? So tell me how you came up with the 40. Studied somewhere. Oh, okay. Which book is that? It's about 100 millimeters of mercury is inside, because same pressure will not, how can it be more than what is there outside? How can inside can be more than what is there outside? So, about 100 millimeters of mercury, okay, what is there in the pressure of the lungs, isn't it? So, and when it comes to the muscles, pressure is less, somewhere 60, 70 or even less than that, because muscles, the pressure for it to reach is very difficult. This is in the lungs we are talking about. Lungs, you breathe, when you breathe, they expand and contract, isn't it? That is the pressure. So, the actual pressure of the lungs is about 100 millimeters of mercury. Obviously, is less than what is outside. How can it be more than what is outside? Tell me. So, these pressures what gives rise to binding the oxygen by the hemoglobin. Because of the pressure, the hemoglobin binds oxygen, and ability to bind oxygen by myoglobin, even with 1 atmosphere, myoglobin gets bonded completely. So, that is its ability. That is why it is used as a storage. It does not need much pressure for it to hold oxygen tightly. So, it immediately binds oxygen tightly. So, in 1 millimeters of mercury, it binds oxygen tightly. That is why it is used as a storage. Myoglobin binds, serves as a storage, oxygen storage protein. Okay. So, whereas the myoglobin, it really needs high pressure for it to bind. 60, 70 millimeters of mercury of pressure is required for it to bind oxygen, and then because the pressure in the muscles are less than what is there in the lungs, it gets delivered. There is a pressure difference, and now the same pressure is not here in the muscles. So, obviously the hemoglobin is unable to bind it and keep it. It delivers it because of the pressure is less. But also there is another factor. The pH also plays an important role in binding oxygen. So, what is the pH of the blood? 0.1, highly acidic. Yeah, just now I told you, if it is highly acidic or highly basic, you cannot survive. So, it should be somewhere very close to neutral. Yeah, somewhere there. Okay. So, pH also plays, when it is acidic, it is unable to bind oxygen tightly. When it becomes acidic, see your muscle, when it functions, that means carbohydrate has released carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide combines with water, becomes carbonic acid, it becomes acidic. So, once it becomes acidic in the muscle, the ability for hemoglobin to bind oxygen becomes much weaker. So, that means it immediately delivers it. So, in the when you are doing workout, your muscles really are working very hard to produce the energy that is necessary for you to function. So, that means muscles really do the job of providing you energy. So, now the carbon dioxide is produced, carbon dioxide combines with water, forms a carbonic acid. So, that carbonic acid, which is acidic in nature, because of that acidity, hemoglobin is not able to bind oxygen very tightly. So, immediately releases. So, there are very many different mechanisms how it takes oxygen and delivers it. Pressure, pH, many other factors are there. Very interesting. It need not be medicine. Of course, if you study medicine, it is much more interesting. But here itself in biology or chemistry, if you want to understand many of these things, is very interesting and exciting to read and understand. There's so many things very interesting to know, like the way I am telling you that how hemoglobin is delivered, how it binds oxygen, what is the structure of the hemoglobin, and how the myoglobin and hemoglobin are different. So many things are there, right? So, because the structure, myoglobin has only one molecule, whereas hemoglobin has 4 molecules. And now, because the presence of these 4 molecules, each molecule has to depend on the other 3. And that cooperativity is, because more number, better they can do job. So each one of them has this unit to bind oxygen. So there are 4 of them which bind oxygen and takes it from the lungs to the muscles. Whereas myoglobin has only one of these, and it immediately binds oxygen very tightly. It doesn't need much pressure, and hence it serves as a storage protein. Stores the, and whenever the muscles find that the hemoglobin has not delivered sufficient oxygen, immediately they take from the myoglobin. So that's how it serves as a storage protein of oxygen. So why oxygen is required? For metabolism, converting the carbohydrate to carbon dioxide plus energy and water. And plants are doing the opposite and making us the carbohydrate, right? There are so many other things, not only how exactly the chlorophyll does the photosynthesis. That's something it is there in 4th class and 5th class. Nowadays everything is there. But more details, if you want to understand it at a higher level, if you read much more detailed about these any one of these things, you will be able to understand better, right? So just few minutes I'll spend. Anyhow, time is up. I will not be able to do much more than what I can do here, what I have already done. So for example, the blood, I told you hemoglobin, for example, is a long chain protein. In this long chain protein, the sequence of these amino acids are fixed. Which amino acid present at where is already known, well established, very well known. This is common for everybody, all living organisms, mammals. This arrangement is known. But due to mutation, what you call cancer, for some reason, when the baby is developing, some of these do not form in the same order. So once there is a change, then everything changes. So these are the disorders in the blood. So there are 2 different kinds of diseases. One is called sickle cell anemia. Anemia means what? Inability to bind oxygen. Anemic means they say you don't have enough blood. That is what means anemic. So that means the blood is not able to do the job it is supposed to do. The amount of iron that is supposed to be present is not there, and also it is not doing the job. Even if iron is there, because of the the mutation, some change in the protein, it is not doing the job. So sickle cell anemia. So I told you this this long chain protein, each amino acids at what position, 80, 100 amino acids are present in each chain of the protein. At one position, there is a, what is this amino acid? Glutamate, correct. So at some position glutamate is present. I don't remember what position it is present, whether it is a 20th amino acid or 30th amino acid, I don't know. So but one of these amino acids, glutamate, instead of glutamate, if this is the, if that amino acid is present, then its ability to bind oxygen, because this valine has only hydrocarbons, long, too many carbons are present, CH3 groups are present. So whereas the glutamate has the carboxylic acid, that also has a carboxylic acid, but less number of carbons. So hydrophobic nature is what gets created. So when it is hydrophobic, the ability to bind oxygen also becomes less. So because of this small change in the chain in the amino acid, instead of the glutamate, if it is the valine is what is present, then it results into the disease called sickle cell anemia. So that means these red blood cells have a shape. It is like a Mexican hat, they call it. The shape of the red blood cell, they are circular but kind of a hat. So once this change in one amino acid happens, then they lose that shape, then they will have a shape of a sickle. Now what is the sickle? Is something that is used for cutting grass, right? this portion is what you use. I have not probably represented a sickle properly, but you know what is a sickle? A sickle is the one that is used for cutting grass. So instead of the circular, which is has a Mexican hat type of hemoglobin, that now changes to this shape, and once it changes to this shape, it has the inability to bind oxygen strongly. So it is inefficient now. So when it is inefficient, it is, your cells are not able to get oxygen sufficiently, and that anemia is called sickle cell anemia. So this is a genetic disorder. For some reason, nobody knows. Nobody knows how these disorders are happening. Mostly nowadays, taking different kinds of medicines can also somewhere it can affect, but body will know how to fight. But sometimes during pregnancy, if some of these medicines go and harm, can change the structure. So this is one of the reasons. So that is what is called a sickle cell anemia. So that means the blood, now you are called anemic, that means you don't have enough blood is what it means, but actually what it means is it's inability to supply oxygen. That's what it means. So sickle cell anemia is one of them. There are other disorders. So let us not already 4:13 you probably would have planned some other program, right? So I will stop here. So if you have any interest, so you can always find the book and read. I just by giving you a few examples, I've told you that how interesting to study these molecules are. So it is still chemistry, but more in the biology that happens, you call it biochemistry. Randi Rajkumar Garu, you want to speak to the students or oh, next lecture is yours? Oh no, already finished. Over, ending. Yeah. Huh? I don't know. Somebody may be there. Huh? Laboratory. They are, I think, visiting the labs. Instruments, I think. Any questions? Huh? Any questions? I already told you, in the previous class that if you don't ask me a question, that means you have understood everything or you have not understood anything. Huh? Understood. No questions? No doubts at all? Cyanide. It is because the iron likes to, because carbon is there, so it likes to bind carbon of the cyanide strongly, very strongly it will bind, and so it will deprive the iron to hold oxygen, bind oxygen. Something is competing, carbon monoxide is better ligand than oxygen. Cyanide is even much better ligand than carbon monoxide, 5,000 times stronger. So in such a case, slowly it takes all the iron and not available for oxygen to bind and transport. And instantly, if you don't breathe for a minute, you will die. So that means these reactions can happen in a minute and still people die, right? Yeah, in the same place where oxygen binds, the cyanide or carbon monoxide can also bind. No other questions? Huh? Okay, thank you. Yeah.
SwayamPrabha, Digital India, Educated India.